All right, it is 7 minutes past the hour, and you're just right on time for KUTV Prime Time News. We have much and more lined up for you, including a big discussion tonight, the regulation of churches. And of course, that discussion will be taking on, and I'll be joined by Bishop Hudson Genda, the chairperson of Church and Clergy Association of Kenya. Apostle Richard Takim will also be in the house, the Cry of Spirit Ministry. Of course, we have much and more lined up for you, but first thing first, our top stories tonight. Tonight, these are the rules. Azimio and Kenya Kwanza lay down ground rules in day 2 of bipartisan talks. You can't stop us. Jeremiah Kioni assure Jubilee Party members that NDC will go on as planned, despite cancellation notice issued by Kanini Kegam. Don't betray me now. President William Ruto urged members of parliament to support his quest for affordable housing plan. Plus, M-Pesa all the way to Ethiopia. Safaricom gets nod to offer M-Pesa services in Ethiopia 7 months after debut. Right, our sign language interpreter today is Evans ODHIAMBO, and I am AUMA Evans. Welcome to the broadcast. Now, the 14-member Azimio and Kenya Kwanza Bipartisan Committee resumed its sittings today at the Bomas of Kenya after a breakthrough yesterday. The committee has ruled out the executive order of option conducting the talks and agreed to convene next week to discuss whether the talks will take parliamentary route or the extra parliamentary approach. KUTV's political affair reporter James Muriki kick off our bulletin tonight with that report.
In its second meeting after the resumption of the Azimio and Kenya Kwanza bipartisan talks at the Bomas of Kenya yesterday, the committee has today provided a report on the framework agreed upon to be followed in the bipartisan dialogue process. Addressing a press briefing at the Bomas of Kenya, Rarienda, Member of Parliament and the co-chair of the bipartisan committee, explained that the bipartisan agreement is a basic agreement of how this negotiation will be conducted.
We have to announce, first of all, that we have unanimously endorsed and agreed to the framework agreement. The framework agreement is the basic document that defines how we operate, what we cover, and all those other issues.
Some of the basic things that this committee has agreed and coordinated in the framework agreement report include composition of the committee, formalization of the committee, protection of consensus, rules of procedure, dispute resolution, adjournment, suspension and dissolution of the talks, public participation, among others. Amolo has saying that the committee has unanimously ruled out the possibility of absorbing the executive order option. He added by saying that the committee will convene next week to discuss if the talks will take the parliamentary option or adopt the extra parliamentary cause.
We have unanimously agreed that we cannot be established or go ahead on the basis of an executive order. And so we are going to continue on Monday. We will resume our sittings to continue engaging on the other two options, and we'll see how far we go.
In the bipartisan session held yesterday at the Bomas of Kenya, both teams agreed to complete the dialogue process within a period not exceeding 60 days.
We have agreed to constrain that time to 60 days. But within those 60 days, we have agreed that the more urgent issues that need to be dealt with will have been dealt with within 30 days.
The bipartisan committee is now expected to give a clarification on the course to be followed. That is whether if it will be parliamentary or the extra parliamentary one. James Morekimanda, KUTV.
Still matters politics. Jubilee Party leaders allied to retired President Uhuru Kenyatta have dismissed the cancellation of their National Delegate Conference scheduled for 22nd and 23rd of May, the year 2023. The party's embattled Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni wants members to ignore the cancellation notice issued by Kanini Kega, who also maintains that he is the Secretary General. Kioni says that the NDC will be chaired by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, as earlier communicated. The party vice chairman David Murathe also urged candidates seeking position in the party to attend the meeting. The party has been restless, with a splinter group supporting President William Ruto taking on the other group supporting former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, President Ruto has today presided over the launch of the construction of affordable housing at Bellevue Park residence in Nairobi. The president has called upon his allies not to betray him in the implementing policies contained in the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. And as our very own Joseph Case reports, the head of state says that the plan is targeting to benefit the ordinary citizens, especially those with low incomes.
President William Ruto has called upon his political allies to cooperate with him in order to successfully implement policies outlined in the Kenya Kwanza pre-election manifesto. President Ruto's plea came during the groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of affordable housing units in Bellevue Park residences in Lang'ata, Nairobi County.
Nyinyi viongozi wenzangu, nawaomba kwa unyenyekevu, tuwe ni watu waaminifu. Tulienda kwa wananchi, tukawaambia wananchi wa Kenya tutapanga mpango wa housing. Na hiyo housing itasalisha nafasi ya ajira kwa vijana wetu. Na itamwezesha mwananchi wa kawaida hata na yeye apate nafasi ya kuwa home owner katika Republic ya Kenya. Mbona saa hii mnataka kuchanganya maneno tena bwana? Kwani kumeendaje?
The president lamented over his allies who seem to disagree with him at a time when he needs their support to fulfill his promises to Kenyans.
Walinisikiza vizuri nikisema kuna mpango ya housing. Si ndio? And it was public. Nilisema tuko na mpango ya housing. Sasa msinigeuke hapa katikati, kwani mlikuwa mnafikiri hiyo housing ilikuwa ni siasa ya maneno ya kuongea tu porojo? Hapana.
President Ruto has called upon Kenyans with incomes to pay the 3% affordable housing tax, which is meant to boost the affordable housing plan. The president says that the levy targets to create a suitable environment for all Kenyans to be able to buy houses, despite the disparities in incomes.
Njia ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba mwananchi wa kawaida anaweza kupata nyumba atanunua kwa bei ambayo inatoshana na mapato yake, shilingi 4,000, 5,000, na baadaye awe na nyumba ambayo anaita ni yake. Ni kuhakikisha ya kwamba tunafanya pamoja.
The government has already launched the construction of approximately 40,000 housing units. It aims to construct 200,000 housing units every year. President Ruto has said that the government is planning to increase the number of houses available for buying from the current 1% to 50%.
The contribution you make in the housing fund is not a tax. Sio ushuru, hiyo ni pesa yako. Hiyo ni pesa yako, sio pesa ya ushuru. Na hiyo pesa yako ukitoa shilingi moja, yule ambaye ni amekuajiri anatoa shilingi moja. Ndio, na hiyo pesa yote inakuwa pesa ya mwananchi.
Wana contractor, please, this is the man who will make sure that more than 5,000 young men of South Sea, young men and women of South Sea are working on this site.
In this project that we are going to develop here, we will create 5,000 employment.
The project has attracted a number of partners, both locally and internationally, including the World Bank. Joseph Kess, KUTV.
While the president is calling for loyalty, let's see what our teachers are up to. Teachers in Machakos County have rejected the 2023 financial bill proposition to have the government deduct 3% of their salaries, as government also contribute the same to finance the affordable housing project. The teachers, through the Machakos branch KUPPET Secretary Muembi Katutum, threatened to withdraw labor if the deduction are made, while at the same time cautioning the legislators against supporting the bill. Yvonne Kemuma with more details.
As the proposed 2023 financial bill continues to stir debate in the country, secondary school teachers in Machakos County have now come forward to express their disapproval with the proposition to have 3% of their salaries deducted to facilitate the government's proposed affordable housing programs. The teachers, who are members of KUPPET, were led by the Machakos branch KUPPET secretary as they threatened to withdraw labor if the deductions are made.
Teachers belong to SACCOs. Currently, we have Malim SACCO, which has assisted teachers in constructing and doing a lot of investments so far. As KUPPET, we have also started Walimu Solidarity SACCO, which currently is assisting teachers in doing what the government is purporting.
Musembi Katuku also said that the many deductions the government gains from the teachers' salaries are not beneficial to them, adding that they will not allow the government to carry out further deductions from their salaries, leave alone the 3%, but even 1%.
This scheme, the arrangement is that the teacher contributes 7.5% and the government gives 7.5%. For the last 4 years, the government has not contributed a part, but they have been deducting teachers that money, and therefore it is a serious challenge.
The teachers have also cautioned the Machakos County legislators against backing the bill, saying that they will have declared enmity between them and the teachers. Yvonne Kemuma, KUTV.
Now switching gears to Hustler Fund. The Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development, Simon Chelugui, says that the government has disbursed 27 billion shillings worth of loans through the Hustler Fund so far. Speaking in Ukunda, Kwale County, Kwale County during the relaunch of Sports Sacco, CS Chelugui urged in favor of SACCOs as they help empower members by driving financial inclusion.
During the relaunching of the Port Sacco, Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development, CS Simon Chelugui, revealed that 27 billion shillings has been lent out to Kenyans at 8% interest rate per year. CS Chelugui says that the government, through the Hustler Fund, will continue to offer instant loans to Kenyans upon request, aiming to provide easy access to credit and to combat embedded credit scoring issues that have often prevented poor Kenyans from accessing cash.
Hustler Fund is a market failure corrective initiative by this administration to address many Kenyans who had suffered and been locked out, some of them listed by the Credit Reference Bureau. Now they have an opportunity through the Hustler Fund to access low-cost financial services.
He maintains that the fund has removed borrowers from the jaws of greedy mobile lenders who have continued to exploit unsuspecting Kenyans with huge interest rates.
The Hustler Fund is a government initiative to support and help people who have been locked out of financial sector by digital predatory lenders.
He has urged SACCOs to reposition themselves to accommodate many Kenyans seeking credit, adding that Hustler Fund for SACCOs will be lent to groups which are registered or have opened accounts with the SACCOs.
My call to SACCOs is to now organize yourself, join these shared services so that we begin to protect and be a brother's keeper.
According to CS Chelugui, SACCOs will now be able to enjoy shared services and a central liquidity facility that pulls together SACCOs with similar objectives to share cost and technology to protect themselves.
Right, the telecommunication firm Safaricom has been licensed to operate in its M-Pesa mobile money transfer services in Ethiopia. While announcing the company's financial report for the year 2022-2023, Safaricom Chief Executive Officer Peter Ndegwa stated that the license will allow the company to offer mobile money transfer services to their customers in Ethiopia. The license comes 7 months after the company launched calls and messages services in the country. Ruth Wanjiru now reports.
7 months after launching their global system for mobile communication GSM in Ethiopia, Safaricom has finally been granted the license to operate M-Pesa services in the country. According to the company's Chief Executive Officer Peter Ndegwa, the move to launch the mobile money service in Ethiopia was as a result of its rapid growing economy, as well as relative stability and peace in the country.
Unity cannot be understated. We are encouraged by the peaceful environment witnessed in the Tigray region and the return to commercial and economic activities. The liberalization of key industries by the government of Ethiopia is a positive move that will open Ethiopians to reap opportunities.
In addition, Mr. Peter Ndegwa revealed that since the launching of the GSM services in Ethiopia, the company has been able to expand its services to 22 cities, citing that this has increased Safaricom's net income.
We closed the year with close to 3 million customers in terms of gross adds. That is customers we added onto our network, and over 2.1 million 90-day active customers. We have over 114 distributor shops, and we have over 900 staff, of which 80% are Ethiopians.
The chairman of the Safaricom board, Adil Ashred, who shared in the CEO's sentiments, stated that the company will continue doing its best to ensure that all customers are satisfied.
We will also continue engaging all stakeholders to ensure that our strategy, vision, and purpose reflect and meet the needs and expectations of the individuals, communities, and entities impacted by what we do. We are committed to making a difference by supporting economies of the countries we operate in through job creation.
According to the report announced by Mr. Peter Ndegwa, Safaricom increased its group service revenue by 5.2%, the voice revenue reduced by 2.6%, while the M-Pesa revenue grew by 8.8%. Overall, Safaricom full-year net profit fell by 22.2% to 52.5 billion shillings from 67.5 billion shillings in 2022. Ruth Wanjiru for KUTV.
Alright, that story by Ruth Wanjiru now takes us to our first break here on KUTV Primetime News. Now remember, when we come, plenty more to follow, including our top discussion tonight. The discussion is all about church regulation. Which way church? Of course, keep on talking. You can talk to us on all of our social media platforms. On Facebook at KUTV Kenya, on Twitter at KUTV_Kenya, at AUMA Evans. Remember to use the hashtag always Primetime News. See you in a bit.
Kurunzi ya kilimo huimarisha afya na uchumi endelevu katika jamii. Ni msingi mkubwa wa kipindi Boresha Kilimo. Kipindi hiki kinajikita katika teknolojia ya kisasa, utafiti na ushirikishaji wa wadau wa kilimo kuonyesha shughuli mbalimbali shambani. Kwa suluhu ya utoshelevu wa chakula, tazama Boresha Kilimo.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audiovisual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
Access to knowledge, solution to unanswered questions.
Guidelines to pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law Matters.
Look, Mom, listen to me. Dad would never leave us, so just relax. I have an idea. Why don't you just rest for a while now?
Joff, I won't divorce you, so what do you want from me? I wonder where he is and what he's doing at this moment.
That must be a lie. I assure you, Dylan, she's marrying Zio as part of a business deal.
You have given him a really bad migraine.
Is that you, Chantal? Hey, Nambi, don't tell me you're with him again.
CRI, Idhaa ya Kiswahili.
Hujambo na karibu kwa taarifa ya habari. Jina langu ni Jacob Mogoa. Jacob Mogoa ni jamaa ambaye ni mpole, mcheshi, lakini alizaliwa Mombasa kule.
Ni mtu ambaye kwamba ana muamala mzuri sana na watu, anajichanganya rahisi sana na watu.
Kapita Kainuku pale.
To the Church O'Clock Show. I'm your host, Esther Becky.
And my name is DJ Teros.
We start you off with a word of prayer and get you started with a live transformational worship experience. And have our minds renewed by the word of God on the word segment.
And not forgetting new music za hii wiki, yani ndakuwa bado nawapatia pale wasanii wamekuwa kiwakali. So make sure manzo tune in because zitakuwa zina flow pia pale mixes kwa wingi, yani zitakuwa zina come through, and pia performance yani from our gospel artist hapa on Gospel Art
from 7 to
10 a.m. only on KUTV.
Vimba da vimba
Wiki hii katika makala ya usanii na sanaa tunazungumza na vijana barubaru. Wanamuziki ambao wamebobea kwa nyimbo za mapenzi.
Na tuna watch every post tunafanya sasa hivi inaenda viral, like again and again. Every video mna post 500,000 views on TikTok, 1 million views on TikTok, 2 million views on TikTok. Ai ni kweli? Mko sure? Okay, wacha nitoe ngoma ya pili. Na ngoma ya pili watu wana receive ya tatu, ya nne. I was like, oh, so we are here to stay.
Ungana nami Ruth Wanjiru Ijumaa wiki hii saa 12:30 jioni na saa 3 usiku kwa makala haya ya usanii na sanaa.
Right, welcome back, and now it's time to dive direct into this discussion. Remember, you can follow this discussion on all of our social media platforms, on Facebook at KUTV Kenya, on Twitter at KUTV_Kenya, at AUMA Events. Remember to use the hashtag #PrimeTimeNews. Of course, I'm joined by very, I'll say, men in cloth, of course, Bishop Hudson Ndeda, of course, the chairperson, Kenya Church and Clergy Association of Kenya. Then we have Apostle Richard Takim, the Cry of Spirit Ministry. Of course, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. And before we dive into this discussion, I want to give you a background analysis of what will be forming this discussion. Now, a section of religious leaders have castigated President William Ruto's decision to form a 17-member task force chaired by Reverend Mutava Musimi to review legal and regulatory frameworks governing religious organization in Kenya. The task force was formed following the discovery of mass grave in Shakahola Forest in Kilifi, in what has been dubbed as the Shakahola Massacre. The disgruntled religious leaders now want the government to stop demonizing the church and instead focus on real issues, while a fraction of religious leaders want an all-exclusive approach, or rather inclusive approach in their affairs, and that the church may be under attack. That is according to some. And as once again joining us in the discussion is Hudson Ndeda, that is the chairperson of Church and Clergy Association of Kenya, and Reverend Apostle, I beg your pardon, Richard Takim, the Cry of Spirit Ministry. Let me begin with you, Bishop. Don't you think it's about time we have a candid and of course a sober discussion based on church regulation? This comes at the backdrop of so many things that we have seen. At least over 100 lives have been lost in Shakahola, all in the name of religion. Is it about time we have this discussion?
Yeah, it is about time we have the discussion. First, I really want to sympathize with the families that lost their loved ones in Shakahola. And it is sad, and it is very unfortunate. Only that what we are saying as a church, even though there is need for talks, but then the generalization of the issue is not right. What do you do when you have a rogue doctor? What do you do when you have a rogue teacher? What do the government do when they have a rogue lawyer? Do they punish all lawyers, all doctors? So we would want to see them approach this issue about church in the same manner they approach other professions. Yes, the church should not be a different case.
All right. Before I come to you, Apostle, when you say, approaching this matter in a way that you would approach any other case, now, this is a church, and of course, they have some sort of mechanism, some call it the umbrella, that, some might believe, your friend, your neighbor, and it is your solemn responsibility to make sure that when things goes, bad in the society, in the churches, you point out. Now, this begs the question, why has it taken so long? And of course, up to this point, we'll say, unless the whistleblowers who blown this particular massacre that happened in Shakahola, probably until now, nobody would have really know what is happening in the name of church. Why has it taken so long?
Yeah, that question can only be responded to by the government, because we are asking, where was the government when all these are happening? Can you do something and the government doesn't notice that something is happening where you are? And again, we could not be where we are today if the government listened to us. 2014, we had a similar issue, if you can remember. And we had several meetings with the former AG Githumui guy. But now the problem is he wanted to advise us on spiritual matters, and he looked like he knows spiritual matters more than the clergy, instead of advising us from the law side. And we told him, we can advise you on spiritual matters and how best we can self-regulate. You see, as it is right now, there is no law. There is no law, and they have not empowered the umbrella bodies. You're talking about the umbrella bodies. The umbrella bodies are there, and they have membership, but we cannot check on pastors because we don't have that framework. They have not given us. But if they listen to us when we had this issue, similar issue in 2014, we could not be seated here talking about this.
Right.
And it is good for the people in government to have a listening ear. The problem is that when you speak, it is one thing to speak, and it is another thing to have a listening ear. And so that has been missing from the government side.
All right.
Yes.
Before we come to, and we'll come to it later, the recommendation, all the things that you had put forward for, of course, for recommendation. Now, let me bring in Apostle Takim. Do you think, or rather, has the church really lost its meaning? Is it about time we sober up?
Well, thank you for bringing me here. I'm going to take it from the biblical point of view.
All right.
Because I don't think the Church of Jesus Christ itself has lost anything. But just as in the womb of Rebecca, there's a biblical figure called Rebecca. So in her womb, there were two children. There was Esau and there was Jacob. So in the same pattern, we can see there are two churches. So there's a true church of Jesus Christ in every nation, and there's a false church. So whatever is happening now is a manifestation of the false church. And people, one will excuse the government, one personally, because one, the government, they are not the Bible, they are not the Holy Spirit. But those of us that are in the kingdom of God, we understand these things. And whatever is happening in Kenya right now, there's a prophetic pattern in the Bible. So if you ask me, I would say God is still in control, in as much as the devil took advantage of people's biblical illiteracy to kill them. To me, that was human sacrifice. It wasn't a massacre. It was human sacrifice because, so the pattern in the Bible is, if you permit me to share, the church in Kenya has gotten to the point where Manasseh, the pattern called Manasseh, the Manasseh season. Because in the Bible, Manasseh was a king in Israel who sacrificed children. There was human sacrifice in his reign. He was a brutal king. And in his time, he brought the issue of altars, worshiping the stars and the moon and all of that stuff. So if you look at it, that's what Kenya is facing now. Now, if you look at the pastor and whatever we are seeing, the bodies they are exhuming,
right.
That was what happened. The loss of life through human sacrifice, so they call it massacre. Now, Manasseh, that was what he did. If you now go backward, how does Manasseh spring forth? He sprang forth from the womb of another king called Hezekiah. Hezekiah was a king that God told him that it's time for you to live, to die. He now said no, that God should give him more days. Within the 15 years God gave him, Manasseh was born. Now, and God let her vow through Jeremiah that never again will he allow people's prayer to turn prophecies. Because there was a prophecy and Hezekiah prayed and God changed his mind. Because when Manasseh was born, Manasseh now became whatever we are seeing in Shakola, Is it Shakahola or whatever?
Shakahola.
Shakahola. That is what represents the church in Kenya. We must understand the prophetic interpretation to these things, or else we clergy will miss it. There's a prophetic interpretation in the Bible to all these things that are happening. Now, the reason why Manasseh was born was because Hezekiah refused to die. If you bring it to our generation, we spiritual leaders, we have refused to die to certain things. Die to the crave for money and all of this stuff. And if you look at whatever is happening now, the foundation was laid through false doctrine. Teachings that does not align with the Bible gave birth to whatever we are seeing now. Right. And sadly speaking, that the government is now coming, like what my colleagues have said, to do whatever they are doing. Of course, to me, I would say the government is helpless because there are 4 levels of authority God gave to man. The authority of family, authority of the church, authority of the government, and of an employer. Now, if the family fails, the church to take control. If the church fails, of course, the government have to come in with regulations. You get my point? Though it's not good, because in the Bible, when you see the government coming to regulate anything about God, it is God's judgment on that thing. Because the thing refused to follow the ways of God. If you ask me, I would say, whatever is happening now ought not to have happened if we, the church that is called the light of the world, if we are really shown that light, there will be no openings for all this nonsense.
All right.
That have happened, that have led to the point that we are right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Apostle talks about there is, you say, some sort of end times, something like that.
Yeah, as I said,
actually,
it's a biblical pattern.
According to you, it's not a massacre. It's actually
it's a human sacrifice. You see, the outsider will see it as a massacre.
All right.
But those of us in God's kingdom, spiritual people,
okay,
who understand how the devil functions.
Okay.
That's human sacrifice. That's what it is.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Well, Bishop.
Yes.
When you look at the argument and actually listen to the argument of Apostle, before I even ask you if you concur with the sentiments, where does the problem really lies?
Yeah, he has spoken partly. You know, that is why we're saying the government should not advise us on spiritual matters.
Okay.
We are the ones to advise them. Unfortunately, what happened down in Shakahola, as he has said, it is the fulfillment of scriptures. Jesus himself said these false prophets will be there. Who am I to think that because I exist, they will not be there? And again, we need to understand that there was no church in Shakahola. That was a cult. Which pastor can do those things? It is unfortunate that this guy fashioned himself as a pastor and fashioned himself as a Pentecostal pastor. But tell me, which pastor can do that? That was not a pastor. That was a cult. And, you know, we have said again and again, that man has a name.
Right.
He is not pastors.
Okay.
And that man was running a cult. Please don't call it a church and don't call him a pastor.
All right. Well, what is known is that he was running a church, and a church had a name, and of course that's why we refer him to, some might call him self-proclaimed pastor. But
do you go to church?
I?
Yes.
Of course I go to church.
What happened at Chakaola, is it happening where you worship?
Well,
yes, that is why I'm telling you, that is not a church. That is a cult.
To the point.
Yes.
The two of you spoke about, you know, the role of, you know, religion in all this. And I want to draw your attention to one of the obligations of the government. The government has the right to protect life of its citizen. And that is what happened. And that's why the discussion of regulating church actually, you know, involved much around about, you know, the government. That's why they form a 14-member committee to probe. Now, we want to address the elephant in the house, and that is church regulation. And I want to read to you some of the mandate that the 7-member committee, 14-member committee have been mandated with. And one of them, the mandate to identify gaps and propose legal and governance changes to the present and, of course, religious extremism, and of course, you know, come up with ways of how to avert and even give citizens an opportunity rather than avenue to report such cases. Then another one is to inform standard use to grant certificates to various religious institutions in the country. And the third one, the task force will engage the public in various forums before submitting the report. That is, I believe, after the report has been, you know, finalized, they will represent it to the public to give their views. And finally, it
it will be made some sort of law. Well, when you look at this recommendation, of course, if you ask me, some might say, now, this seems to be the plan. But do you see a future in this?
Well, personally, I've been saying in different platforms on this issue, that the government will try its best, but the government cannot solve this problem.
All right.
The reason is because the Church of Jesus Christ is an entity created by God. It's God's idea, it's not man's idea. Now, everything that is God's idea has God's way of dealing with it. In God's pattern of dealing with matters like this, especially in the Bible, every individual have to learn how to regulate themselves. Because no matter what the government puts in place, no matter how excellent it is, bad guys will always corrupt the system and come up with, it's only the innocent that will suffer because the innocent want to follow the rules. But the bad guys will corrupt the system and still come up with these things. So, biblical point of view, each individual should learn how to regulate himself, how through discernment, identifying this is a false pastor, this is a true pastor, this is a false church, this is a true church. And that only happens if people go to church seeking to become disciples of Christ. You don't go to church because you're looking for one miracle or one signs and wonders. You have to be trained to become like Christ, to be a disciple of Christ. So once you are discipled, you can regulate yourself. In another word, for instance, personally, if I see any pastor telling me, come and collect this oil, it's going to solve your problem, I will regulate myself by not collecting the oil, because I know from the scriptures the days of using oil are over. Now we have the Holy Spirit. When the pastor tells me, come and buy this water, it's going to solve your problem, or your star have been lost, so come and do this to recover the star. I will tell the pastor, you are lying, because my star cannot be lost because I am the star. Christ has made me a star, so I cannot be lost. So when you know truth, you regulate yourself. When you are ignorant, you become a victim of this kind of charlatans and these liars who are bringing a bad name to the name of Christ. So to me, the government should go on whatever they are doing. You know why the government has come in now? Because the church has failed. If the church was standing, the government will not come in. There was a time in England where the church stood and there were no criminals. There were no, in fact, police had no job to do because the church was preaching righteousness. They were not selling water, selling oil, selling handkerchief. The church was not monetized. Christianity was not monetized. So they preached the authentic gospel and there was righteousness and there were no criminals. Let's say that was what the church has been. This issue will not emerge. People like whatever happened in Kilifi, the word that we are preaching will have resisted it, and people will have known the truth, and they will not go into such places. So whatever the government is doing is good, but that's not the final solution.
Well, Bishop.
Yes.
You have taken issues with the members that have been appointed, of course, to steer ahead this task force. And you say some of them does not try, okay, some of your members, of course, they don't belong to the committee, and you want an in-all approach to these issues. And you even read mischief in whatever the outcomes of these bipartisan talks will come. When you look at the members largely, some of them are clergymen. Where is the problem?
Before I come to that, let me talk a bit about regulating the church.
All right.
And I want to speak here confidently on this live TV that the church is already regulated.
Okay.
Yes, the church in Kenya is already regulated, and there is no amount of law that can instill discipline and honesty in people. When people doesn't have personal integrity, you know, Kenya has a constitution, it has laws. Go to the prisons, they're full. If laws can change the hearts of men, then we could not be having those people in prison. I think what is there is personal integrity. And the church, I'm repeating, is already regulated. And I will tell you, you cannot register a church until you follow the laws that are available.
Okay.
Yes, there are regulations that has to be followed before you register a church. That is one. Two, before you register a church, you submit a constitution that this is what we will be doing and this is what we stand for. Already that is regulated. It is regulations. So, for example, down in Shakahola, it is very easy. Can you go to the file of that cult and check when this cult came before us for registration, what did they say they will be doing? So upon that, then you can tell them what you're doing is not what you told us to do. You see, we are already regulated. But anyway, let me come now to your question about the task force. Yes, and indeed on Tuesday we had a press conference. We have nothing personal against the task force and its members. The only thing we are saying that there was lack of consultations. Because people say Pentecostals are not organized. We are very organized because we are in umbrella bodies where we are housed. And so we are saying we were not consulted on this matter, and yet this matter concerns us. When they came up with SACCOs for matatus,
All right.
Did they consult teachers or doctors or lawyers? Who did they consult? They consulted the leaders of the SACCOs, those people who run matatus, those people who understand that industry. They sat down with them, they agreed on how to do it, and at the end of the day, they agreed. And you know, yes, in that committee, as you have said, those are clergymen. We agree. But then when you look at it, they represent denominations, not Pentecostals. Yes, because if you're talking of Pentecostals, then we are talking of umbrella bodies where these pastors are members. None of them were consulted. And those in that committee, none of them leads any umbrella body in this country.
Okay.
None of them.
Well,
And that is where we are different.
What is your biggest fear?
We have no fear. The biggest fear is this: that cultman presented himself as a Pentecostal.
All right.
And therefore we feel for them coming up with the issue of regulations, then the Pentecostals are the ones that will be most affected.
Okay.
And if we are the ones who will be most affected, why do they want to sit down without including us, without at least sitting with us and consulting us and say, this is the way we want to go and this is what we want to do? And then we come up with the agreeable formula and the composition of the team so that everybody has confidence in that.
All right. Hang on there about, you know, some of the recommendations that you think you will have brought on the table. Now, Apostle, do you think the church is under attack?
Well, the response I may give may not be palatable to everybody in the body of Christ in Kenya.
All right.
But if you ask me, based on the prophetic interpretation of event, like I began, the church in Kenya is not under attack.
All right.
I began giving a prophetic analysis in the Bible in my opening, because Bible characters in our days represent patterns of things in the spirit. So I said, the problem we have in Shakahola or whatever, it did not start today. There were teachings on ground that have been in the church for a long time that resulted in this nonsense we are seeing. So because the spiritual leaders that were holding the Bible in their hands did not die to greed and covetousness. So the teachings were perverted. As a result, this happened. That represents Hezekiah, who refused to die.
Okay.
Then what sprang for Hezekiah was Manasseh, Shakahola. That is Manasseh for you. If you look at after Manasseh was judged. Manasseh was imprisoned. He was judged. He repented and God forgave him. Manasseh gave birth to another child called Ammon. So the church in Kenya is going to the Ammon season. Ammon will still not repent, but out of the loins of Ammon will come out Josiah.
Right.
Josiah will now bring the revolution.
Okay.
So whatever is happening in Kenya is orchestrated from the realm of the spirit. So to me, the church is in the process of getting to its finest hour, where God will purge all this nonsense out of the church and bring a generation that will present the church the way Jesus started it. It is called the Josiah generation.
Okay.
All I have said is in the book of 2 Kings chapter 21.
All right. Well, you spoke about some recommendation that you thought maybe it would be wise if, had you been engaged, of course, you would have presented something on the table. Now the train has already left. Of course, the task force was sworn in, and now it's upon them to work this out. But I want to know, like from you, had you been consulted the way you claim? And by the way, I think there is a Pentecostal, Bishop Karaoke, if I'm right.
Yes.
And should he, of course, represent you? Your umbrella, of course, because you said you are not represented, but Bishop Karaoke is one of you.
I have no personal problem with Bishop Mark Karaoke. He's a servant of God who has done great work in this country. But this is what I'm saying.
All right.
He represents Deliverance Church.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, we have umbrella bodies in this country where different Pentecostal churches are housed.
Okay.
You get the point? So it was good to get representatives in that team from these umbrella bodies. And if I was on that team, even today I have a solution that shouldn't take all those millions of money doing all that. One, we asked for self-regulation since 2014. They have not given us. That is why I told you this problem could not be here today. Two, I will do what the AG said yesterday when he sat with the parliamentary committee. He admitted that the problem is on the side of the government. And he said it is because they don't have representations in the counties and sub-counties. Everything is done here at Harambee House. So they are not in the villages, they are not in sub-counties, they are not in counties. So it is very hard for them to know what is happening there. So two things: devolve the services in counties, sub-counties, and then give us self-regulation. And the problem is gone.
All right.
Why spend all those millions?
Okay. Well, still on this topic, and this I'll like to engage you about. When you look at what is happening right now, some might see as a battle between the so-called umbrella. The first umbrella, if I could call them, was the evangelical church that came out openly and say, yes, we need regulation. And of course, the Catholic Church were against it, and they said this is demonizing the churches. And now we have the Pentecostal, of which they want, of course, to be involved in all this. When you read the push and pull, what does it tell about, reading from the same script and even the mantra that the church should be portrayed to the public, the image, especially at a time that requires national interest in a very critical and very sensitive topic like church regulation, that now we have witnessed so many lives being lost?
Well, it's unfortunate that this thing got to this point. And like I was sharing with somebody today, I said, thank God that it is Kenya. I know countries in the world that will ban Christianity outrightly because of what has happened.
Right.
So what you have just said to me is the arm of flesh trying to solve a spiritual problem.
Okay.
Whenever you engage the arm of flesh to solve spiritual problem, there will be tussles like this. This pastor come in, this one say, there will be tussles. This is not a matter of the arm of flesh. Like I said, this thing is moving to the finance hour for the church in Kenya. God is going to push the bad elements out. And maybe using the government or using whatever. All I know, God will push it out. And we'll get to a point of the Josiah generation. But this push and pull is also a sign that the arm of the flesh, humans, are trying to solve a spiritual problem. And there's nothing, if you ask me, the government have good intention, if you ask me, because they cannot fold their, like what you said earlier, there are two major assignments of every government: the security and the welfare of the nation. So no good government will fold their hands and watch what's happening in Kilifi to repeat itself. They want to do something, but though they may not be equipped, if we spiritual leaders are going to stand and serve as the light of the world, instead of the darkness of the world, these things will not happen. The Bible itself is a regulation document for mankind. This book is enough regulation document for mankind. The problem we're having is not being taught, it's being used. There's a difference between teaching the Bible and using the Bible. So a lot of preachers are using it, they are not teaching it. So as a result, people enter into all this stuff that you are saying and all this trouble. No matter how perfect the committee will be, they could bring representatives from every local assembly that will still not solve the problem.
Okay.
The problem is we taking the doctrine of Christ and putting it into the hearts of men. And all these things with that.
Well, based on this
Evans,
conversation,
maybe I would speak something there.
All right.
When you talk of commissions and task forces, I don't think we have done it like the government of Moi did it.
Okay.
At one point, there was something about devil worship in this country. And President Moi came up with a commission to look for the devil. They're still looking for that devil up to today. They have never found it. And the commission...
They look for the devil?
Yes. They have never found it up to today.
That is really hilarious.
So, when we talk of these things, and as he said, these are spiritual matters. Please remove the arm of flesh in it and involve the spiritual in the right way.
All right.
Let us not look like we are fighting the church, because we saw it in 2014 and they harassed the church left, right, center because of one man.
Mm-hmm.
One man. And that man still exists and the government has never touched him.
Mm-hmm.
Why? So is it really they want to solve that problem, or somebody is against the church?
Okay.
You see, that becomes the question. In 1920, when we had COVID,
All right.
the focus was on the church. Now it is 2013, something has happened. You see the energy and everything, and then we know. And again on 2014, they placed a moratorium on church registration. They have not been registering churches until last year, June.
Okay.
But in 2018, they registered atheists. So you wonder whether we have people in government who, we don't know.
All right. Well, gentlemen, because of time, and this might serve as your parting shot, but there is something that you have touched on, very key component. It's not, and you say, of course, you can regulate, of course, the church, but at the end of the day, it's based on a person's character. Now, well, these recommendations, if you look at them, are quite awesome. And should they, of course, see the light of the day to regulate, give certificates, awesome. But we're talking about the character of a person as an individual. If you believe in dark forces, you will get the certificate, still practice whatever religion you subscribe to, whatever spirit it is. Well, do you think at the end of the day, this will still solve the problems that you're seeing right now?
Well,
even as you wind up this particular discussion.
Well, I think if the people have a good intention, which I believe they do, and if God is there guiding them, they could solve maybe 10% or 20%. But like I said, bad guys will always corrupt whatever comes out, and good guys will suffer for nothing.
Okay.
You get my point? The solution goes back to we preachers to stop playing games in people's lives and start preaching the authentic gospel of Jesus Christ. If we do it, all these things will not happen.
Okay. Well, Bishop, Apostle has spoken about some very key issues, like preachers to stop, playing with the minds of their believers. Of course, we have seen what is happening. Like some are really wondering, like, how can one man convince like almost over 100 people to, fast, or rather to starve to death? That's a big question. Does it even point fingers to the believers themselves, of course? Is it a question that has to, begin from some sort of education, educating the members of the public about the religion and, to distinguish between the evil forces and the real forces? Is it about that, even as we close the discussion?
Unfortunately, as he said from the beginning, the Bible is being fulfilled. You see, the same Bible says there are some who have ears, they will never hear. They have eyes, they will never see.
All right.
So as much as we will preach, but there will always be remnants on both sides. Those who don't want to hear, and there are some who will just buy into falsehood, even if you tell them the truth. It is unfortunate. But then my parting shot would be, can we have a better approach when we have these problems and call individuals by their names and deal with the individuals when we have a problem? And why I'm saying this is that these things are bound to happen. They will happen every month, every year until Jesus comes.
All right.
And then I'm wondering how many laws will they be coming up with to regulate the church when anything happens.
Yeah.
They will end up with a volume that even them, they will not be able to remember it.
All right. Well, gentlemen, because of time, thank you so much for making time to speak to us on this very important conversation that really touch the heart and soul of Kenyans. And it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. That is Bishop Hudson Ndenda, the chairperson of Church and Clergy Association of Kenya, Apostle Richard Takim, the Cry of Spirit Ministry. It's always a pleasure. Of course, now we take a short break. When we come back, plenty more to follow, including sport news. Right, it's now time for sporty action. Inter Milan got the better of AC Milan in the Milan derby of the UEFA Champions League semi-finals first. Alright, that's a wrap up. Thank you so much for all those who made this production a success, and of course for you, our esteemed viewers, for always keeping us a company in the last 1 hour and some few minutes. Until next time, it's bye-bye for now. My name is AUMA Evans. Evans ODHIAMBO has been our sign language interpreter tonight. Goodbye.